Imagine a world where flowing, crystal clear water reaches your home at any hour, supplied through a marvel of engineering so advanced it would stand the test of millennia. This wasn't a dream, it was daily reality in ancient Rome, all thanks to one of the most transformative inventions in human history, the aqueduct. While many picture these structures as elegant stone arches stretching across valleys, they were far more than beautiful relics. They were nothing short of the life force of an empire, revolutionizing everything from public health to architecture and reshaping urban civilization in ways that still influence how we live today. What's truly astonishing is how these engineering wonders didn't just deliver water, they redefined what a city could be. Before aqueducts, settlements were bound by their proximity to rivers or springs, limiting their size and hygiene. But Rome's ambition refused to be constrained by geography. Through a breathtaking combination of precision, labor, and visionary design, they built channels that brought fresh mountain water directly into the heart of bustling metropolises. This steady, reliable supply didn't just quench thirst, it fueled public baths, supplied magnificent fountains, flushed sewers, and even supported industries, creating a standard of urban living that wouldn't be matched for over 1,000 years. Today, we're going to journey back in time to uncover how these magnificent structures were conceived, built, and maintained. We'll explore the brilliant minds and tireless workers who made the impossible possible, and reveal the hidden engineering secrets that allowed aqueducts to slope perfectly for miles without modern tools. More than that, we'll see how this constant flow of water didn't just sustain Roman cities, it elevated them, enabling a level of public health, leisure, and grandeur that became the envy of the ancient world. So come along as we dive into the story of how water didn't just serve an empire, it built one. To truly appreciate the revolution that aqueducts brought, we first need to understand the daily struggle for water in the city's earliest days. Visualize a Rome without its grand engineering, a cramped, bustling settlement of narrow streets where the air was thick with the smoke of hearth fires and the inescapable odor of waste. The Tiber River, winding through the heart of the city, was the main water source, but it served a dual and dreadful purpose. It was not only for drinking and washing, but also the primary channel for disposing of every kind of refuse, from household sewage to the waste from butchers and tanners. This constant contamination turned what should have been a life-giving resource into a breeding ground for sickness, making waterborne diseases like typhoid and dysentery a relentless fact of life. For most citizens, the alternatives were hardly better. They depended on shallow, hand-dug wells that were easily tainted by seepage from nearby latrines or graves, or they collected rainwater in cisterns that could stagnate between storms. This fundamental insecurity meant that clean, safe drinking water was not a public utility but a precious commodity. A bustling, informal economy of water carriers, known as aquarii, emerged to meet the desperate demand. These men would haul heavy jars of water from the Tiber or the best springs they could find, selling it by the measure at exorbitant prices. This system made something as basic as water a marker of social status. While the wealthy could afford this luxury, the poor often had no choice but to risk their health with whatever they could get. This chronic scarcity acted as a physical anchor, chaining the city's growth to the banks of its polluted river. A metropolis cannot rise skyward or spread outward if its population is constantly threatened by thirst and epidemic. Every new citizen, every new building intensified the pressure on the inadequate and compromised water supply. The very ambition of Rome was being stifled by this most basic of limitations. It was this environment of hardship and constraint, this daily battle for a fundamental human need, that created the undeniable, urgent demand for a better way. The stage was not just set for a revolutionary solution. The city was crying out for one, setting in motion the chain of events that would lead to one of history's most astounding public works projects. Into this world of thirst and struggle stepped a man of immense ambition and vision, Appius Claudius Caecus. In the year 312 BC, while Rome was locked in a grueling conflict known as the Samnite Wars, Appius Claudius, a powerful censor, made a decision that would alter the course of urban history. He commissioned the city's first aqueduct, a monumental project that would be named the Aqua Appia in his honor. This was not merely a public works initiative, it was a bold declaration that Rome would no longer be constrained by its environment. It was an act of sheer will, transforming a fundamental limitation into a newfound strength. the engineering of the Aqua Pier was a masterpiece of practical brilliance. Stretching for 16 kilometers, its design was deceptively simple yet incredibly effective. For the vast majority of its length, the channel was built underground, carefully carved and lined with stone. This subterranean path wasn't just an aesthetic choice, it was a strategic one. By burying the water conduit, Roman engineers protected it from enemy attack during a time of war, shielded it from evaporation under the hot sun, and kept the water cool and free from the pollutants that plagued the city's open sources. The entire system operated on one unshakable principle: gravity. The channel was built on a meticulously calculated, consistent downward slope from the springs near Praenest all the way to the heart of Rome, allowing nature itself to do the work of moving a constant stream of fresh water. The impact of this steady flow was immediate and profound, serving a dual purpose that cemented its importance. For the military, it was a strategic asset. A reliable supply of clean water meant healthier, more effective troops who could be provisioned without reliance on vulnerable local sources, a critical advantage in prolonged conflicts. For the civilian population, it was nothing short of a revolution. The Aqua Pia fed public fountains and basins throughout the city, dramatically reducing the average citizen's dependence on the filthy Tiber or the expensive water cellars. For the first time, clean water began to transition from a private luxury to a public right. Perhaps the most enduring legacy of the Aqua Pia was the powerful precedent it set. Its successful construction and operation proved to a skeptical world that such grand, complex infrastructure projects were not only possible, but absolutely necessary for a growing power. It demonstrated that a city could engineer its own salvation, breaking the ancient chains that bound human settlement to natural water sources. This first aqueduct was the proof of concept that unleashed a wave of hydraulic ambition, paving the way for the even grander constructions that would follow and forever changing the relationship between a city and its most vital resource. While the ambition to bring water from afar was monumental, the true genius of the aqueducts lay in the application of a simple yet unforgiving physical principle: gravity. The Romans had no pumps, no electric motors, nothing to push the water against its own nature. Their entire system depended on constructing a channel with a perfectly calculated, continuous downhill slope from the source spring to the distribution tank in the city. This gradient, known as the gradients, had to be steep enough to maintain a steady, self-cleaning flow that prevented silt from settling and blocked debris, yet gentle enough to avoid a destructive, erosive torrent that would tear the channel apart. Achieving this balance over enormous distances was their foundational engineering challenge. The precision required was breathtaking. For the Aqua Marcia, one of Rome's longest aqueducts stretching over 90 kilometers, the total drop from source to city was only about 180 meters. To put that in perspective, that's an average slope of roughly 1 foot for every mile of channel. Imagine trying to build a perfectly straight ramp that descends just the height of a single stair over an entire mile, and then maintaining that exact angle without deviation for dozens of miles across wildly uneven terrain. A miscalculation of even a few centimeters over a kilometer could mean the water would either flow too slowly and stagnate, or worse, rise back up and overflow the conduit, rendering the entire expensive project useless. To achieve this impossible level of accuracy, Roman surveyors, known as agrimensors, relied on a suite of ingenious tools. Their most critical instrument for establishing a level line was the chorobates, a remarkably sophisticated device. Picture a long 20-foot wooden bench with sturdy legs supporting a shallow trough along its top. The surveyor would fill this trough with water, using the still surface as a perfect reference for a true level. Precise measurements could then be taken from this baseline. For even more sensitive work, or on windy days when the water in the trough might ripple, the chorobates also featured plumb bobs hanging from each corner to double-check its alignment. With this tool, a crew could work their way across the countryside, meticulously mapping the path and calculating the exact depth of digging or height of construction required to maintain the precious, life-giving slope. This mastery of gradient is what made the aqueduct's most dramatic features possible. When the path encountered a valley, the engineers didn't divert the course, they simply continued the line, building the iconic arcades of stone arches to carry the channel at its precise elevation across the gap. Conversely, when a hill stood in the way, they tunneled straight through it, as with the 400-foot-long tunnel excavated for the Vetus Aqueduct. Every mountain pierced and every valley crossed was a testament to their unwavering commitment to that single, perfect line of descent. It was this stubborn refusal to let geography dictate terms, this relentless application of mathematical precision to the natural world, that allowed a steady stream of fresh water to conquer vast distances and transform the very concept of a city. Mastering the gradient was only half the battle. The other half was building a conduit so robust and watertight it could withstand the elements for centuries. The materials chosen were a testament to Roman practicality and ingenuity. For the channel itself, the preferred method was opus cementitium, Roman concrete. This wasn't just any concrete, it was a revolutionary mix of lime, water, and an aggregate that often included volcanic ash, known as pozzolana, which gave it incredible strength and durability. Workers would pour this mixture into wooden frames to form the U-shaped channel or specus that would carry the water, but the true magic was in the waterproofing. The entire interior was coated with a special lining made from a finer, paste-like blend of pozzolana and lime. When this mixture cured, it created an impermeable barrier that was actually stronger than the concrete beneath it, effectively turning the entire channel into a sealed stone river that refused to leak a single precious drop. While we often picture the soaring arcades of stone arches, the vast majority of an aqueduct's length was actually hidden from view, running underground or encased within massive substructures. When above-ground construction was unavoidable, the Romans employed a modular system of stone or brick arches that distributed weight with brilliant efficiency. Quarries miles away from the construction site would buzz with activity, producing massive blocks of tufa or travertine. These stones were then carefully shaped by skilled masons before being transported to the route, a logistical nightmare solved by ox-drawn carts and, when possible, barges along rivers. Each arch was a self-supporting unit, and by repeating this stable form, engineers could create elevated highways for water that strode confidently across the deepest valleys, immune to the floods and obstacles that would have crippled a ground-level canal. The human effort behind these projects was simply staggering, a symphony of coordination on an almost unimaginable scale. While slave labor was undoubtedly used, especially for the most backbreaking tasks like quarrying and hauling, the workforce was far more diverse. Roman legions, when not campaigning, were frequently deployed as highly skilled engineers and laborers, their discipline and organizational structure making them perfect for such massive, coordinated endeavors. They were joined by free-born citizens, specialist stonemasons, and carpenters, all working under the direction of the emperor's architects and the curator aquarum, the senior official in charge of the water supply. This wasn't a chaotic mob of workers, it was a well-oiled machine with teams assigned to specific tasks: excavation, masonry, concrete pouring, and bricklaying, all operating in a carefully sequenced ballet of construction that could continue for years or even decades on a single aqueduct. This colossal investment of material and manpower was a powerful statement of imperial identity. Building an aqueduct was not a private venture for profit, it was a grand public benefaction, a testament to an emperor's or official's power, wealth, and commitment to the people's welfare. The resources required: the millions of tons of stone and concrete, the thousands of workers, the intricate planning, were beyond the reach of any ordinary state. Only Rome, with its vast empire, its immense treasury, and its unparalleled ability to mobilize human and material resources, could undertake such projects. Each aqueduct was a physical manifestation of Roman order imposed upon the chaos of nature, a permanent declaration that the empire could provide for its citizens in the most fundamental way possible, ensuring its legacy would quite literally flow through the ages. If the Aqua Appia was the proof of concept, then the Aqua Marcia was the masterpiece that announced Rome's engineering prowess to the world. Completed in the year 140 BC, this aqueduct was a project of staggering ambition, conceived not out of desperation, but from a place of confident power. Its primary purpose was no longer merely to provide water, but to provide the finest water. The Marcia's source was the pristine, cold springs of the Anio River Valley, high in the Sabine Hills, and its 91-kilometer journey to Rome was a relentless pursuit of preserving that celebrated purity every step of the way. What truly set the Aqua Marcia apart was its revolutionary design. For the first time, Roman engineers employed arcades, those iconic lines of soaring stone arches, not as a last resort, but as a deliberate and large-scale architectural strategy. When the route demanded a consistent elevation across a valley, they built upwards, creating elevated highways for water that marched across the Italian countryside. This bold move solved a critical problem. By staying high above the ground, the channel avoided contamination from runoff and human activity that could seep into underground sections. These arcades were more than functional. They were a permanent, powerful statement of imperial might, visible for miles and transforming the landscape into a testament to Roman order and ingenuity. The water it delivered was so famously cold and clear that it became the gold standard for the city. Ancient writers celebrated its quality above all others, noting its unparalleled taste and refreshing coolness, a luxury in Rome's sweltering summers. This excellence dictated its use. Unlike earlier aqueducts that might mix service water with drinking water, the Marcia was reserved primarily for the most prestigious purposes. It fed the public fountains for drinking, yes, but its real glory was in supplying the city's expanding network of luxurious public baths or thermae, and even the private villas of the elite through special, licensed pipes. The Marcia didn't just quench thirst, it provided an experience, turning something as simple as a drink of water into a symbol of refinement and civilized living. In this way, the Aqua Marcia marked a profound shift in the role of infrastructure. It moved the aqueduct from being a utilitarian lifesaver to an instrument of social and cultural policy. The reliable delivery of such high-quality water made the grand, social Roman bath culture possible, fostering communities where citizens from all walks of life could gather. Furthermore, by creating a hierarchy of water quality, with the best reserved for public consumption and elite leisure, it subtly reinforced the social order, making access to this crystal-clear resource a visible marker of status. The Marcia was no longer just an engineering project, it was a powerful symbol of Rome's growing sophistication, proving that the empire could now master not just the quantity of water, but its very quality, elevating daily life to an art form. After its epic journey across the countryside, the water's work was far from over. The final challenge was one of precision and fairness, how to distribute this life-giving flow to an entire city of over 1 million people. The solution was a brilliant piece of hydraulic engineering called the Castellum Aquae, or distribution castle. This wasn't merely a holding tank, it was the sophisticated command center for the entire urban water supply, a place where a single powerful stream was calmly and logically divided to serve the countless needs of the metropolis. Typically built at a high point just inside the city walls, this reinforced concrete structure was the critical interface between the long-distance aqueduct and the dense urban web of pipes below. Inside the Castellum, Roman engineers implemented a system of extraordinary elegance to prioritize water usage according to public need. The main channel from the aqueduct would empty into a large, circular basin. Set into the walls of this basin were multiple outlet pipes at different heights, each leading to a different part of the city's network. The highest outlets served the most critical public functions, the lacus or public fountains where every citizen, rich or poor, could collect fresh water for their daily needs. The next level down would feed the water to the vast public baths, the thermae, which were not just for cleaning but vital social hubs. Finally, the lowest outlets supplied private residences, businesses, and industrial operations, but only if there was surplus after the public demand was satisfied. This wasn't just plumbing, it was a physical manifestation of Roman civic values, ensuring that the community's welfare always came before private luxury. From the Castellum, a labyrinth of pipes carried water into the very heart of the city. The material of choice for these pipes was lead, known to the Romans as plumbum, which gives us the word plumbing. The use of lead naturally raises modern concerns about toxicity, and it's a complex issue. The Romans were certainly aware of lead's potential to cause harm, with some writers like Vitruvius even noting that lead pipes could be detrimental to human health. However, the sheer practicality of the material often outweighed these concerns. Lead was soft, malleable, and easy to work with. Sheets could be rolled into tubes and soldered with lead-based alloy to create watertight seams that were incredibly durable. In a sprawling city, the ability to easily fabricate and repair a vast network of pipes was a powerful advantage. Furthermore, the design of the Roman water system itself likely mitigated the risk of lead poisoning for the average citizen. The water was almost always flowing, never sitting stagnant in the pipes for long periods. This constant motion caused a layer of mineral deposits, primarily calcium carbonate from the hard water, to coat the interior of the pipes. This scale effectively created a protective barrier between the water and the lead lining, significantly reducing leaching. For the vast majority of people who collected their water from the constantly flowing public fountains, their exposure was likely minimal. The greater risk may have been for the wealthy elite whose homes had direct taps where water might sit in the pipes longer. Yet even with this understanding, the Roman lead pipe network stands as a testament to their engineering pragmatism, solving the immense logistical challenge of urban distribution with a material that was, for its time, remarkably effective. Now that carefully managed water flowing from the Castellum had one primary and vital destination, the neighborhood public fountain or lacus, these were not mere decorative features, they were the absolute lifeblood of the common Roman citizen. Scattered throughout every district of the city, a lacus was never more than a short walk from any residence, ensuring that no one, regardless of their wealth or status, was ever truly deprived of clean water. This was a revolutionary concept in the ancient world, a guaranteed daily provision of a fundamental human right, funded by the state for the welfare of its people. The design of these fountains was both practical and elegant. A typical lacus was a large, rectangular basin made of stone or concrete, often fed by a constant stream of water from a bronze spout or a more elaborate decorative face. The overflow didn't go to waste, it was channeled into the sewer system below, helping to constantly flush the streets of waste and debris. This constant flow was the key to its health benefits. Unlike stagnant cisterns or a polluted river, the water in a public fountain was always fresh, always moving, and always safe to drink. For a city plagued by waterborne illnesses, this reliable access to uncontaminated water was a powerful shield against epidemic, fundamentally improving the average lifespan and quality of life. But the lacus was far more than a utility, it was a vibrant social hub. Imagine the daily rhythm of life revolving around these gathering spots. Multiple times a day, women and servants would arrive with their jars and pots, forming lines and waiting their turn to collect the household's water supply. This was not a chore done in isolation. It was a chance to exchange the latest gossip, share news, discuss politics, and strengthen the bonds of community. Children would play nearby and neighbors would catch up on the events of the day. In a city of crowded apartment blocks with little private space, the public fountain served as an extension of the home, a vital open-air living room where the social fabric of the neighborhood was woven and reinforced. This system also played a crucial role in mitigating class disparities. While the wealthy in their villas might enjoy the convenience of a private pipe, the quality of water at the public fountain was identical. The poor matron drawing her daily supply drank the same cold, pure water from the aqua marcia as the senator in his garden. This egalitarian access to such a high-quality resource was a powerful social leveler. It demonstrated the state's investment in the well-being of all its citizens, not just the elite, fostering a sense of shared civic pride and belonging. The public fountain stood as a daily, tangible reminder that everyone, from the highest to the lowest, benefited from the genius and generosity of Rome. But the true marvel of the Thermae wasn't just their existence, it was the sophisticated engineering that made their daily operation possible. These were not simple bathhouses, they were complex thermal power plants requiring a constant, massive flow of water, which only the aqueducts could provide. Beneath the marble floors and behind the decorated walls lay a hidden world of furnaces, boilers, and pipes. The famous hypocaust system, a central heating method, circulated hot air from wood-burning furnaces through hollow spaces under the floors and behind the walls, warming the entire complex. Meanwhile, water was heated in large bronze boilers suspended over these same furnaces before being channeled into the hot pools or caldarium. This intricate system, demanding vast quantities of both water and fuel, was a direct result of the aqueduct's reliable flow, turning the dream of a public heated bath for thousands into an astonishing reality. Beyond the steam and sweat, the grand imperial baths like those of Caracalla or Diocletian functioned as all-encompassing social and cultural centers, truly the heart of Roman urban life. For a minuscule fee, essentially the cost of a loaf of bread, a citizen gained access to an entire day of leisure and self-improvement. After exercising in the palaestra, a vast open courtyard, or engaging in conversation in the richly stocked libraries, one would proceed through the bathing ritual itself. This involved moving through a series of rooms, starting in the unheated frigidarium for a bracing plunge, moving to the warm tepidarium to adjust, and finally into the hot caldarium to sweat out impurities, often followed by a massage and scraping of the skin with a strigil. This wasn't a rushed hygiene routine. It was a cherished daily ritual of wellness and social connection that could last for hours. The impact of this widespread bathing culture on public health was nothing short of transformative. In a world before modern medicine, regular bathing with hot water and scraping was one of the most effective ways to reduce parasites, clean wounds, and maintain general hygiene. While the Romans didn't understand germ theory, they empirically knew that cleanliness promoted health and that communal bathing in constantly refreshed, aqueduct-supplied water was far safer than washing in a stagnant pond or a polluted river. This regular practice contributed to a healthier, more resilient population, reducing the spread of skin diseases and other infections and creating a physical standard of cleanliness that distinguished a Roman citizen from those they might have dismissively called barbarians. This distinction points to the bath's most profound role as a powerful forge of Roman identity. Within the soaring vaults of the Thermae, the rigid hierarchies of the outside world softened. A senator might exercise next to freedmen, and a soldier could share a bench with a merchant, all united by the shared experience of the bath. Conversations flowed as freely as the water, discussing business, politics, or the latest chariot races. In this steamy democratic space, the ideals of Roman civilization, community, leisure, and shared civic pride were physically enacted every single day. The bath was where one went to become and to feel Roman. It was the aqueduct's gift, delivered in a torrent of hot and cold water, that made this daily reaffirmation of culture and cleanliness not just a privilege for the elite, but a cornerstone of life for an entire empire. Yet this river of fresh water flowing into the city created a new and equally pressing challenge: what to do with the river of waste flowing out. The Romans understood that bringing in such a massive volume of water without a plan for its eggs, it would simply turn their city into a swamp. Their brilliant solution was to integrate the input with the output, creating a closed-loop system where the aqueducts themselves powered the very mechanism that would keep the city clean. The same water that quenched thirst and filled baths was then channeled to perform one final essential duty: flushing the streets and sewers of urban waste. The crown jewel of this sanitation system was the Cloaca Maxima, the greatest sewer. Its origins were actually humbler than its legendary status suggests. Initially begun in the 6th century BC, it was first conceived as an open canal to drain the swampy waters of the Roman Forum into the Tiber River. Over centuries, as Rome grew in power and engineering confidence, this simple ditch was enclosed, expanded, and fortified into a massive, vaulted subterranean channel made of monumental stone blocks. So vast and sturdy was its construction that it remains partially functional to this day, a testament to Roman foresight and durability. It became the main artery of a city-wide network of smaller drains and sewers, all gradually designed to funnel waste downward and outward. But a sewer is only as effective as its flushing mechanism. Without a constant flow of water, solid waste would simply accumulate, creating catastrophic blockages and unimaginable odors. This is where the aqueducts became the unsung heroes of sanitation. Public latrines, often built near the bustling forums and bath complexes, were directly connected to this underground network. These were not private, single stalls, but surprisingly social spaces: long, bench-like seats with multiple holes, often accommodating 20 people or more at a time. Beneath each seat, a channel of clean, flowing water diverted from an aqueduct ran continuously. After use, a sponge on a stick dipped into this same channel of fresh water, served for cleaning, and the waste was immediately carried away by the current, preventing stagnation and the foul smells that came with it. The health benefits of this engineered cleanliness were profound. In an age before understanding bacteria, the Romans empirically knew that foul smells and stagnant waste were connected to disease. By constantly removing human excrement and other organic refuse from the urban environment, they drastically reduced the breeding grounds for pests and the vectors of illness. The risk of devastating outbreaks from cholera, dysentery, and other waterborne diseases was significantly lowered. This made Roman cities not only more pleasant places to live, free from the omnipresent stench that plagued other ancient settlements, but also demonstrably healthier, contributing to population growth and stability. This integration of aqueduct and sewer represents one of the most sophisticated aspects of Roman urban planning. It showcases a holistic understanding of a city as a living system where one solution powered another. The water supply wasn't just an isolated utility, it was the engine for a comprehensive public health initiative. The Cloaca Maxima was more than a drain, it was the sink that was constantly being rinsed, ensuring that the grandeur of Rome, built by the aqueducts, would not be literally undermined by the filth of its own people. It was a monumental achievement in civic engineering that would not be matched in scale or effectiveness for over 1,000 years, yet the life-giving flow of the aqueducts did not stop at the city walls. Its journey continued, spilling out into the surrounding countryside to perform another equally vital function, transforming the very land that fed the empire. Beyond the bustling urban centers lay a ring of peri-urban farms and intensively cultivated gardens, and it was here that the water's power to sustain life was channeled into the soil itself. This extension of hydraulic engineering into agriculture was a strategic masterstroke, turning the regions immediately around Rome and other major cities into incredibly productive breadbaskets that could reliably support the massive and ever-growing urban populations. This irrigation wasn't about flooding vast fields for staple grain crops like wheat, which were still largely rain-fed and imported from provinces like Egypt and North Africa. Instead, it was a more targeted and sophisticated form of cultivation. The steady, controlled flow from aqueduct branches and channels was used to nourish high-value, water-intensive crops that were essential to the Roman diet and economy. Lush vegetable gardens supplied the city with fresh greens, legumes, and herbs daily. Carefully tended olive groves and vineyards, the cornerstones of Roman cuisine and culture, thrived with the supplemental watering, producing more reliable harvests of olives for oil and grapes for wine. This ensured a diverse and nutritious diet was available within a short distance of the markets, reducing the spoilage and cost associated with transporting delicate produce over long journeys. The impact of this agricultural stability on urban growth cannot be overstated. Before such irrigation, cities were perpetually vulnerable to the whims of weather. A single drought season could lead to crop failure, soaring food prices, famine, and the social unrest that inevitably followed. By creating a buffer against drought, the aqueducts provided a form of food security that was unprecedented. City planners and emperors could authorize the construction of new neighborhoods and welcome new citizens with the confidence that the local land could produce enough fresh food to supplement the imported grain supply. This broke the ancient Malthusian trap where a city's population was always threatening to exceed its agricultural carrying capacity, allowing Rome to swell to over 1 million inhabitants, a scale not seen again in Europe for over 1,000 years. Economically, this system created a virtuous cycle of prosperity. The highly productive farms and vineyards created wealth for their owners and provided abundant employment for rural laborers. The reliable food supply helped keep prices in the urban markets relatively stable, which was a constant concern for officials aiming to keep the populace content. Furthermore, the surplus of high-quality wine and olive oil produced in these irrigated areas became a valuable export commodity, generating revenue that flowed back into the heart of the empire. The water that coursed through the aqueducts thus became a current of economic energy as well, fueling not just the physical health of the city, but its financial vitality and its remarkable, unstoppable expansion. This same water that fed the city and flushed its waste also found a powerful new purpose, becoming the driving force behind a burgeoning industrial revolution. The aqueducts did more than just support life, they mechanized it, channeling the energy of flowing water into workshops and mills to perform work on a scale human or animal labor could never match. This transformation began with a simple yet brilliant adaptation of the water wheel, a technology known to the Greeks but perfected and deployed on an industrial scale by Roman engineers. By tapping into the constant regulated flow of an aqueduct channel, they could guarantee a reliable power source far superior to an unpredictable river, turning workshops into factories and artisans into early industrial producers. The most widespread and vital application of this water power was in the grinding of grain. For centuries, this backbreaking work was done by hand using saddle querns or by animals walking in circles to turn large millstones. The introduction of the water-powered grain mill or mali changed everything. A branch of an aqueduct would be directed to pour onto the paddles of a vertical water wheel, its steady flow setting the entire mechanism into motion. Through a system of gears, this rotational power was transferred to turn one or even multiple pairs of heavy millstones, grinding wheat into flour with relentless, effortless efficiency. The sound of these mills and the flour dust that coated everything nearby became the hallmark of a Roman industrial district. The scale could be staggering. The complex at Barbegal in southern France used an aqueduct to feed 16 separate wheels powering multiple mills, producing enough flour to feed an entire city of thousands, all day, every day. This wasn't just a convenience. It liberated a massive portion of the population from the daily drudgery of hand milling, allowing labor to be redirected to other trades and significantly increasing the caloric output available to feed the urban masses. Beyond flour, this captured energy was harnessed for a surprising variety of manufacturing processes. The fulling of woolen cloth, a crucial step in cleaning and thickening fabric, was revolutionized by water power. Fulling mills used trip hammers, lifted and dropped by rotating cams on a water wheel shaft, to mechanically pound the cloth in large vats of water and cleansing agents like urine or fuller's earth. This automated a process that was once agonizingly slow and labor-intensive, boosting the production of the Roman textile industry. The same trip hammer principle was applied to ore crushing in mines, where heavy stone hammers pulverized quartz to extract precious metals, and even to woodworking, where sawmills used water power to drag large saws through timber, dramatically accelerating construction and shipbuilding. Even for industries that didn't require mechanical power, the aqueducts provided an indispensable resource: vast quantities of clean process water. Tanneries, essential for producing leather for everything from soldiers' boots to sandals, required enormous amounts of water for soaking, washing, and treating hides. Dye works, supplying the vibrant colors so loved in Roman clothing and decoration, needed reliable water sources for mixing pigments and rinsing fabrics. Pottery workshops relied on water for preparing clay and for the constant cleaning of tools. Before the aqueducts, these water-intensive industries were forced to locate near rivers, often polluting them and being plagued by seasonal droughts or floods. The aqueducts gave them the freedom to set up anywhere within the urban network, assured of a clean, constant supply that made large-scale, consistent production not just possible, but predictable. This industrial application fundamentally altered the economic landscape of Roman cities. The aqueduct was no longer just a public health utility or a vehicle for leisure. It was a primary economic engine. By providing cheap, abundant power and processed water, it dramatically lowered the cost of production for essential goods like bread, cloth, and building materials. This efficiency fostered economic specialization, allowing cities to develop robust manufacturing sectors that could support both local demand and long-distance trade. A city with powerful aqueducts could host a diverse and thriving economy, less vulnerable to the shocks of famine or market disruption. The water flowing from the mountains didn't just sustain the body and the spirit, it powered the workshops, enriched the merchants, and built the very economic foundation that allowed the Roman urban experiment to flourish for centuries. Beyond the fountains that served daily needs, the aqueducts enabled a far more spectacular and artistic use of water, transforming it from a simple utility into a breathtaking medium for public art and architectural propaganda. The most magnificent expression of this was the Nymphaeum, a monumental public fountain that was less a practical source of water and more a dedicated shrine to the water nymphs, and a celebration of the emperor's boundless generosity. These were not mere basins with spouts, they were multi-storied architectural marvels, often taking the form of an elaborate exedra, a semicircular facade crammed with statues, columns, and richly colored marble. Water would cascade from multiple levels into a large, shallow pool below, creating a constant, soothing murmur and a shimmering visual spectacle that dominated the public square. A prime example was the Meta-Sudans in Rome, a massive conical fountain near the Colosseum whose name meant sweating turning post, evoking the image of a glistening stone marker around which chariots might race. While its primary function was to provide a place for athletes and gladiators to wash off sweat and dust, Its true purpose was symbolic. Its towering, elegant form, constantly sheathed in a film of flowing water, served as a visual anchor in the city's most bustling district, a permanent, shimmering reminder of the abundant resources and artistic vision that the imperial water supply made possible. It was a statement in stone and water. Rome was not just functional, it was magnificent. The psychological and environmental impact of these water features on urban life was profound. In the heat of a Mediterranean summer, the presence of a large, cascading fountain like a nymphaeum created a tangible microclimate. The evaporation from the falling water cooled the air around it, offering a refreshing oasis of relief from the sun-baked streets. The sound of rushing water also provided a natural acoustic mask, drowning out the incessant noise of cartwheels, street vendors, and urban crowds with a calming, natural white noise. This combination of visual beauty, physical cooling, and soothing sound transformed chaotic public squares into pleasant, desirable gathering places, enhancing the quality of life and encouraging civic interaction. This fusion of utility and beauty became a defining characteristic of Roman urban design, a philosophy that was eagerly exported to every corner of the empire. From the stunning fountains of Ephesus to the ornate water displays in North African cities like Leptis Magna, local elites competed to build their own nymphaea, using water to display their wealth, their cultured tastes, and their connection to Roman ideals. This was how a city announced its sophistication and its participation in the benefits of imperial civilization. The aqueduct made this entire aesthetic possible. It provided the sheer volume of water required for such extravagant display without depriving the public of their essential supply. The constant flow meant the art was always on, always dynamic, and always reinforcing the message that under Roman rule, even the most basic element of life could be elevated into a thing of enduring beauty and civic pride. This deliberate policy of prioritizing public need over private luxury was a radical departure from the norms of the ancient world, and it was fiercely protected by Roman law. The man tasked with this enormous responsibility was the curator aquarum, a senior official appointed directly by the emperor. His role was part engineer, part administrator, and part judge. Under his authority, a detailed legal code governed every aspect of the water supply, with a central principle etched into law: the public good came first. The flow to public fountains, baths, and other state buildings was absolutely sacrosanct. It could not be diminished or interrupted for any private user, no matter how wealthy or powerful they might be. Even the ability to pipe water directly into a private home, a tremendous luxury known as a ius equi ducendi, was not an unrestricted right. It was a carefully granted privilege, a license that came with strict conditions and was always subject to review. Emperors like Augustus took a personal interest in preventing abuse, with historical records showing he once personally ordered a review of all private grants and cut off numerous illegal pipes that had been tapped into the public lines by wealthy landowners seeking to bypass the system. This wasn't just about fairness, it was a matter of civic stability. Roman leaders understood that a population denied access to clean water was a population ripe for rebellion. By guaranteeing this most basic resource, they effectively removed a potent source of social friction, ensuring the plebeians remained content and the city remained governable. The result was a powerful, tangible sense of shared citizenship. In the crowded streets, a senator's daughter and a slave might find themselves drawing water from the same public fountain, partaking in the same high-quality flow from the Aqua Marcia. This daily experience was a constant physical reminder that despite the vast inequalities in wealth and status that defined Roman society, everyone was entitled to this one fundamental benefit of being Roman. The water itself became a symbol of unity, a liquid thread woven through the social fabric that connected the highest to the lowest. It fostered a collective civic pride, a sense that the grandeur of Rome, its engineering marvels, its imperial might, existed not just for the elite, but for the people. This philosophy of water as a public trust, managed by the state for the benefit of all, may be one of ancient Rome's most enduring legacies. It stands in stark contrast to many ancient societies where control over vital resources was a key instrument of power and oppression. In Rome, the aqueduct was the great equalizer. It demonstrated that infrastructure could be more than just functional. It could be a tool for social cohesion, a means of building a stable and prosperous society by ensuring that its most valuable resource flowed, quite literally, to everyone. This reliable, state-guaranteed water supply did more than just sustain a population. It acted as the most powerful economic magnet the ancient world had ever seen. Imagine you are an artisan, a merchant, or a trader in the 2nd century. You're looking to set up your workshop, open a new shop, or establish a trade route. Where do you go? You go where the resources are guaranteed. A city with a powerful aqueduct was a city that had solved its most fundamental constraint, and that stability attracted ambitious people and their capital like nothing else. It signaled that here was a place where business wouldn't be crippled by drought, where your workforce would be healthy, and where your own water-intensive operation, whether it was dyeing cloth, tanning leather, or brewing beer, could flourish without fear. This wasn't a subtle pull, it was a powerful economic current that drew in talent and enterprise from across the Mediterranean. This influx catalyzed a cycle of self-reinforcing growth and specialization. As more people arrived, the demand for goods and services exploded, which in turn created more jobs and attracted even more people. The aqueduct was the engine enabling this density. Without it, a city like Rome could never have supported its peak population of over 1 million souls. It would have simply collapsed under the weight of its own thirst and filth. But with the water flowing, the city could grow vertically into its famous insulae, or apartment blocks, and horizontally into new districts, all while maintaining a baseline of public health. This critical mass of people concentrated in one place created a vibrant, competitive marketplace unlike any other. Specialist bakers could thrive because they didn't need to grind their own flour. The aqueduct-powered mills did that for them. Furniture makers, jewelers, and glassblowers could focus on their crafts, knowing that the basic necessities of life were available for purchase in the forum, freeing them from the need to be subsistence farmers on the side. The economic impact rippled outwards to the very edges of the empire's trade networks. A massive, wealthy, and dense urban center like Rome became the consumption capital of the world, its markets voraciously demanding luxury goods and staples alike. This demand is what fueled the immense grain ships from Alexandria, the olive oil amphorae from Spain, and the spice caravans from the east. The aqueducts, by enabling the city's existence at such a scale, were indirectly funding global trade. Furthermore, the technical expertise gained from building these structures became a valuable export in itself. Roman engineers were dispatched to provinces to design and oversee aqueduct construction, and local elites in cities from Lyon and Gaul to Carthage in North Africa competed to fund them, knowing that a reliable water supply was the fastest way to elevate their city's status, economic power, and connection to the Roman ideal. The financial return on this immense public investment was undeniable and multifaceted. Yes, the construction was astronomically expensive, requiring vast sums from the imperial treasury or wealthy benefactors. But the payback came not in direct fees for water, which was largely free at the point of use, but in the immense wealth generated by the thriving economy it supported. A larger, healthier population meant a larger tax base. Busy workshops and bustling ports generated custom duties and trade tariffs. The stability provided by a well-fed and hydrated populace reduced the costs associated with quelling food riots or managing public health crises. The aqueduct transformed a city from a drain on imperial resources into a powerful revenue-generating engine. It was a brilliant long-term strategy. Invest in the fundamental health and infrastructure of your urban centers, and they will repay you many times over in economic vitality, cultural prestige, and imperial stability. This same engineering genius that quenched the thirst of metropolises was also a decisive factor on the battlefield, where water often meant the difference between victory and defeat. The legions of Rome didn't just march with their iconic armor and disciplined formations. They advanced with the unshakable confidence that their empire could extend the very infrastructure of civilization into the most hostile and barren frontiers. For a military force, a secure water supply was as critical as weapons or tactics. An army could carry only a few days' worth of water in skins and carts, making them desperately vulnerable to poisoned wells, contested rivers, or simple drought. The ability to construct aqueducts to serve permanent forts and even temporary siege camps was a force multiplier that no other ancient power could match. The process began almost the moment a new territory was pacified. Legionaries, many of whom were trained as combat engineers, would immediately set to work securing a reliable water source. For a permanent frontier fortress like those along Hadrian's Wall in Britain or the Rhine and Danube rivers in Germania, this meant building sophisticated aqueduct systems that rivaled those in the homeland. They would identify springs in nearby hills, often the first strategic resource secured in any new region, and then begin the backbreaking labor of digging channels and sometimes building elevated sections to carry that water directly into the heart of the camp. This wasn't a luxury, it was the foundation of the garrison's health and operational readiness. A fort without its own clean water source was a fortress under permanent siege, at the mercy of any enemy who could control the local river. Consider the strategic advantage this provided during a prolonged siege, a common and grueling form of ancient warfare. While the besieged city inside the walls would be desperately rationing its stored water, watching its cisterns run low and its people suffer from thirst and the diseases that followed, the Roman army outside could be living in relative comfort. They would build their own temporary aqueducts, often by diverting a local stream or spring with ditches and wooden conduits to bring fresh water directly to their encircling siege works. This meant their soldiers remained hydrated, healthy, and vigilant, while the defenders grew weaker by the day. The psychological impact of this was devastating. The besieged would see the Romans, seemingly by magic, enjoying a steady supply of the very resource that was dwindling inside their own walls, crushing morale and often hastening surrender. Perhaps the most profound military application was the Aqua Alexandrina, the last of Rome's 11 great aqueducts, completed in the year 226 AD by Emperor Alexander Severus. While it served the city, its strategic purpose was unmistakable. Its source was far to the east and its path supplied the Castra Praetoria, the fortified barracks of the Praetorian Guard, and other key military installations on the eastern side of Rome. In an era of increasing political instability, securing the loyalty and health of the troops stationed to protect the emperor himself was paramount. The Aqua Alexandrina was a physical guarantee to the most powerful soldiers in the empire that their needs would be met, a clever use of infrastructure to ensure the military's allegiance and combat effectiveness right at the heart of power. This mastery of hydraulic engineering granted the Roman war machine a unique strategic flexibility. It allowed them to project power into arid regions previously considered unconquerable. They could establish and maintain large legionary bases in the deserts of North Africa and the Middle East, places where local water sources were seasonal or insufficient. By doing so, they could permanently garrison troops in these challenging environments, policing trade routes, deterring nomadic raids, and consolidating control over newly annexed territories. The aqueduct became a tool of empire building, not just city building. It allowed Rome to plant its flag and its legions anywhere it chose, turning the map of the ancient world into a testament to the power of water, discipline, and stone. While the aqueducts were undeniably feats of engineering, their construction was also a masterclass in political strategy, transforming flowing water into a powerful currency of imperial prestige. For an emperor, commissioning a new aqueduct was perhaps the most brilliant public relations move available, a tangible demonstration of benevolence that directly improved the daily lives of millions. Unlike a triumphant arch or a statue, which served primarily as a static monument, an aqueduct was a living, functioning testament to a ruler's generosity, its benefits felt by every citizen who drank clean water, bathed in the Grand Thermae, or enjoyed the produce from irrigated gardens. It was philanthropy with immediate and undeniable returns in public goodwill. Emperors like Trajan and Hadrian understood this dynamic perfectly and leveraged it to solidify their power and legacy. Trajan's Aqua Traiana, dedicated in the year 109, was a project of both immense practicality and brilliant symbolism. Sourcing water from springs north of Lake Bracciano, it primarily served the Transtiberum region, a densely populated, working-class district on the right bank of the Tiber that had long been underserved. This was a deliberate and calculated act. By bringing abundant clean water to a less affluent area, Trajan wasn't just solving an infrastructure problem, he was sending a clear message that his care and investment extended to all citizens, not just the elite on the fashionable hills. It was a powerful gesture of inclusion that undoubtedly strengthened his popularity among the populous plebeian class. Hadrian, ever the consummate builder and diplomat, continued this tradition. He is famously associated with the extensive repairs and maintenance of the existing water system, a crucial but less glamorous task that previous rulers might have neglected. By ensuring the aqueducts he inherited function at peak efficiency, Hadrian portrayed himself not as a ruler seeking glory solely through new construction, but as a responsible steward of the public trust, a caretaker of the empire's vital organs. This focus on maintenance reinforced his image as a practical, hands-on administrator deeply concerned with the empire's long-term health and stability, proving that preserving existing greatness could be as potent a political statement as building anew. The celebration of these imperial benefactions was carved in stone for all to see. Grand inscriptions on the Castellum distribution castles and the arches of the aqueducts themselves explicitly credited the emperor as the sole benefactor. Phrases like Imperator Caesar Nerva Traianus Optimus Augustus, followed by Aquam in Urbum Suum Primus Induxit, first brought this water into his city, were common. This was more than a builder's plaque, it was official propaganda in its most effective form. Every time a citizen took a drink from a public fountain, they were participating in a system provided by the emperor. The water itself became a constant physical reminder of his power and generosity, creating a direct link between the ruler in his palace and the people in the streets. This strategy masterfully reinforced imperial authority by framing absolute power as a form of paternal care. The emperor became the pater patri, the father of the country, who provided for his children's most basic needs. In a political system that had transitioned from a republic to an autocracy, this was vital. The aqueducts helped legitimize the emperor's rule by demonstrating that his immense power was being used for the unambiguous good of all. They were functional monuments that argued more persuasively than any speech that the concentration of power in one man's hands was not a threat to liberty, but the very source of the peace, prosperity, and luxury that defined Roman life. In the end, an emperor's name might be forgotten on a battlefield, but it will be remembered every day with the simple, life-affirming turn of a tap. But the genius of the aqueduct was far too powerful to remain confined within Italy. As the legions expanded the frontiers of the empire, this transformative technology traveled with them, becoming one of the most potent tools of Romanization. From the sun-baked hills of Spain to the bustling markets of Syrian Antioch, provincial cities eagerly adopted this hallmark of civilized life, not as a forced imposition, but as a desired symbol of status and progress. Local elites, often seeking to curry favor with Rome or elevate their own standing, competed to fund these monumental projects, adapting the core Roman principles to their unique landscapes and materials, creating a fascinating tapestry of imperial engineering. Consider the breathtaking Pont du Gard in southern France, part of the aqueduct that supplied the city of Nemours, modern-day Nimes. While employing the classic Roman design of stacked arches, its construction showcases a stunning local adaptation. The entire structure was built without mortar, using precisely cut limestone blocks from a nearby quarry, locked together by the sheer force of gravity and masterful stone masonry. The aqueduct channel at the very top is carried 50 meters above the river Garden, a testament to the Roman insistence on maintaining that perfect gradient regardless of the terrain. Yet its three tiers of arches are not merely functional. They possess a graceful, rhythmic proportion that gives the structure a sense of serene power, blending utility with an artistic sensibility that feels uniquely suited to its Gallic setting. It stands not as a foreign imposition, but as a local masterpiece achieved through Roman engineering wisdom. Equally magnificent is the Aqueduct of Segovia in Spain, a structure so robust it has remained in use for nearly 2,000 years. Here, the local granite provided a durable, imposing building material. The engineers designed a two-tiered arcade of 167 arches that strides confidently across the city's deep valley, culminating in a dramatic visual terminus at the city's highest point. The sheer simplicity and raw power of its design, with its uncompromising vertical pillars and minimalist arches, reflect a pragmatic adaptation to the available resources and the need for enduring strength. It is a less ornate but no less awe-inspiring version of the Roman ideal, perfectly tailored to its environment. This widespread replication did far more than just quench provincial thirst. It standardized urban living across the entire Mediterranean world. A governor could travel from Britannia to Egypt and find a familiar urban blueprint, a city furnished with public fountains, bustling baths, and efficient sewers, all powered by the reliable flow of an aqueduct. This shared infrastructure became the bedrock of imperial administration, creating a predictable and manageable template for city life. It facilitated trade as merchants moved between cities with a common understanding of urban capabilities and needs. Most importantly, it facilitated a profound cultural exchange. The public bath, the social heart of any Roman city, became a forum where local traditions met and mixed with Roman customs. In these steamy communal spaces, a citizen of Gaul or North Africa could literally and figuratively immerse themselves in the rhythms of Roman life, fostering a shared sense of identity that transcended local tribal affiliations. The aqueduct, therefore, was more than a piece of infrastructure. It was a physical and psychological anchor of the Roman world. By providing this fundamental public benefit, Rome offered provincial subjects a tangible improvement in their quality of life, a powerful incentive for peaceful integration into the empire. The water flowing from these arches was a constant, clear message. Participation in the Roman system brought health, comfort, and sophistication. It was a persuasive argument for empire built not just on the might of the legions, but on the undeniable benefits of engineering genius and the promise of a better, more civilized way of life for all. The shimmering arcades and hidden channels we've marveled at were not self-sustaining. Their legendary longevity was not a product of magical construction, but the result of the ancient world's most sophisticated and relentless public maintenance regime. Imagine the sheer scale of the challenge, keeping over 400 miles of conduit, from fragile lead pipes to massive stone arcades, in perfect working order to serve a city of 1 million people. A single major blockage or breach could cut off water to entire districts, threatening public health and stability. To meet this immense responsibility, Rome created a permanent professional water administration, a bureaucracy of flow that was as revolutionary as the aqueducts themselves. At the helm of this operation was the curator aquarum, the curator of the waters, appointed directly by the emperor. This was not a ceremonial post for a retired politician, but a demanding job for a senior statesman of proven integrity and skill. He was the chief executive of the entire water supply, responsible for its daily operation, its long-term health, and its legal integrity. His duties were immense. He managed a large budget drawn from the imperial treasury, oversaw a permanent staff of architects, engineers, and clerks, and adjudicated the constant legal disputes over water rights and illegal siphoning. This position represented a profound understanding that building the aqueduct was only half the achievement. Preserving it for generations was the true measure of Roman civic commitment. We are granted an astonishingly detailed window into this world thanks to one remarkable holder of this office, Sextus Julius Frontinus, appointed curator aquarum by the Emperor Nerva in the year 97 AD. Frontinus was the archetype of the diligent Roman administrator. Rather than simply accepting the existing system, he embarked on a comprehensive personal inspection of every aqueduct, walking their lengths, investigating their sources, and interviewing the work crews. He combined this boots-on-the-ground research with a deep dive into the state archives, studying the original engineering plans and senatorial decrees related to each water channel. The result of this painstaking effort was his book, De Aqueductu Urbis Romae, on the aqueducts of the city of Rome. Frontinus's work is far more than a dry technical manual. It is a captivating snapshot of a complex utility in action. He provides precise statistics on the capacity of each aqueduct, details the legal regulations governing water use, and offers scathing critiques of the corrupt practices he uncovered, such as water officials being bribed to grant larger pipe sizes to private users. His writing reveals a man possessed by a zeal for efficiency and fairness, determined to root out waste and ensure that every drop of water delivered to the city served its intended public purpose. Thanks to him, we know not just how the water flowed, but how the Romans thought about water as a public resource to be managed with meticulous care. On the ground, the day-to-day work of keeping the water flowing fell to the Familia Aquaria, the family of the aqueduct. This was a large, specialized workforce of imperial slaves and freeborn citizens, organized into highly trained teams, each with a specific mission. One team, the Scarcitors, were the patrolmen, They walked the routes of the aqueducts constantly, both the exposed arcades and the underground sections accessible through manholes, their eyes trained to spot the first signs of trouble, a crack in the mortar, a patch of dampness on a pier, or vegetation growth that could signal a hidden leak. They were the first line of defense. When a problem was found, the silicarii, the repair crews, would move in. These were the stone masons, concrete workers, and lead smiths who performed the surgeries on the aqueducts. Their work required incredible skill. Repairing a leak in a pressurized lead pipe without shutting off the entire supply was a delicate operation. Fixing a crack in a massive concrete conduit while it was still wet demanded innovative techniques. They also carried out planned maintenance, such as the periodic shutdown of individual aqueducts to allow for the difficult and filthy work of desilting the channels, ensuring the gradient remained perfect and the flow self-cleaning. Perhaps the most intriguing and constant battle was against fraud. A dedicated team of vilici or inspectors was tasked with hunting down illegal taps. Unscrupulous landowners would often attempt to secretly tap into the main channels or the public distribution pipes, diverting water to irrigate their private gardens or supply their own baths without paying for the official license. Frontinus describes these thieves with palpable irritation, detailing the methods used to detect their clandestine plumbing, often by measuring the flow at different points to identify unexplained losses. The penalty for getting caught was a massive fine, a powerful deterrent that protected the public supply from being quietly stolen away. This entire administrative and physical effort was funded directly by the Roman state, a massive and ongoing financial commitment that proves how seriously they took this responsibility. The salaries of the curator and his staff, the wages for the work crews, and the cost of materials all came from the imperial treasury, viewing it not as an expense but as a vital investment in the city's health and stability. This highly organized, well-funded, and permanently staffed utility company, operating 2,000 years ago, is a stunning testament to Roman administrative genius. The aqueducts themselves are the magnificent bones of the system, but it was this relentless, unseen work of maintenance that gave them their centuries-long lifespan, turning brilliant engineering into enduring civilization. Yet even the mighty Roman Empire was not immune to the relentless passage of time, and its magnificent network of aqueducts faced a slow, painful decline that mirrored the fracturing of the state itself. As the central authority in Rome weakened over the centuries, the first casualty was often the sophisticated and expensive bureaucracy that maintained public works. The curator aquarum and his dedicated familia aquaria found their budgets slashed, their crews disbanded, and their meticulous schedules for inspection and repair abandoned. Without this lifeblood of constant maintenance, the aqueducts began a gradual but inevitable decay. Channels that were not regularly cleaned began to choke with silt and debris, reducing their flow to a trickle. Minor cracks in the mortar, once promptly patched, widened into major breaches. The lead pipes within the city, now unattended, were stolen for their valuable metal or simply collapsed, severing the final link to the homes and fountains they once served. This physical decay was brutally accelerated by the waves of invasion and warfare that swept across the empire. Siege warfare in particular targeted aqueducts as critical strategic infrastructure. An invading army seeking to subdue a Roman city knew that destroying its aqueduct was a sure way to break the will of its defenders, cutting off both their water and their spirit. The iconic arcades, once symbols of unshakable power, became vulnerable highways for attack. There are accounts of besieging forces actually using the dry aqueduct channels as secret tunnels to infiltrate city walls. In the 6th century during the Gothic Wars, the great aqueducts leading into Rome were deliberately cut by besiegers, and while they were later partially repaired, they never again flowed with their former abundance. The delicate balance of a system that required empire-scale resources to sustain had been shattered, and the knowledge of how to restore it was slowly forgotten. The consequences for the cities of Europe were catastrophic and immediate. Urban life as the Romans had defined it simply became impossible. Without the constant flow of clean water, the magnificent public baths, the very heart of social and hygienic life, fell into disuse, becoming crumbling ruins. The public fountains ran dry, forcing populations to return to the pre-Roman era of relying on polluted rivers, shallow, contaminated wells, and expensive water carriers. The sophisticated sewer systems, which depended on aqueduct overflow to flush them clean, quickly backed up, turning streets into open sewers. The hard-won gains in public health were erased virtually overnight. Cities that had supported populations in the hundreds of thousands saw their numbers plummet, not just from warfare and famine, but from the return of the waterborne diseases typhoid, dysentery, cholera that the aqueducts had once held at bay. For centuries, the quality of urban life reverted to a standard far below that of the Roman era, a stark testament to what had been lost. But the story of the aqueduct does not end in the Dark Ages. Their haunting skeletal remains, those lines of stone arches marching across the European countryside, never ceased to inspire awe and curiosity. During the Renaissance, as scholars looked back to the classical world for knowledge, they rediscovered texts like Frontinus's Manual and began to study the physical ruins with new eyes. Renaissance engineers and architects, figures like Leon Battista Alberti, recognized the sheer genius behind the Roman gravity-fed system and sought to emulate it. The repair of the Aqua Virgin aqueduct in Rome in the 15th century, which brought water to the Trevi fountain, was a direct attempt to revive this ancient technology, signaling a return to Roman ideals of urban magnificence and public benefaction. Most remarkably, some aqueducts never stopped working at all. The magnificent aqueduct of Segovia in Spain, a testament to Roman provincial engineering, was so robustly built from local granite that it continued to convey water well into the 20th century. Its enduring operation served as a living classroom for engineers, a permanent proof of concept that a gravity-fed public water supply was not just an ancient legend, but an achievable modern necessity. This direct physical lineage provided an irresistible model for the developed world as it entered the industrial age, and its cities once again began to swell with populations. This Roman philosophy, that a clean, reliable, and public water supply is a fundamental responsibility of the state, essential for health, economic prosperity, and social order, is perhaps their greatest legacy. It is the core principle behind the vast municipal water systems that serve our cities today. Every time we turn on a tap with the expectation that clean water will flow, every time we visit a public park with a decorative fountain, and every time we rely on a complex, unseen network of pipes and treatment plants, we are participating in a system whose foundational logic was laid down 2,000 years ago. The Romans proved that infrastructure is more than concrete and lead. It is the physical manifestation of a social contract, a promise that a civilization makes to its citizens to provide not just grandeur, but the fundamental elements of a dignified and healthy life. The enduring legacy of Roman hydraulic engineering is not confined to history books or picturesque ruins. It flows silently beneath our very streets, shaping the fundamental principles of every modern municipal water system on the planet. While we now rely on powerful electric pumps and complex chemical treatments, the core logic of how we move water across vast distances to serve dense urban populations was first proven on an empire-wide scale by Roman engineers. Their most profound gift to the future was the elegant and unshakable principle of gravity-fed distribution, a concept so effective it remains the gold standard for efficiency and reliability in civil engineering today. Consider the monumental water supply system of a modern metropolis like New York City. Its origins in the 19th century were a direct and conscious echo of the Roman model. Faced with recurring fires and public health crises driven by an inadequate water supply, city planners looked to the past for a solution. They turned away from local polluted sources and instead sought out pristine reservoirs in the distant Catskill Mountains, over 100 miles away. Just like the Roman agrimensors, their engineers had to chart a course through challenging terrain, calculating a precise, continuous downhill slope from the mountain sources to the city's holding tanks, all using gravity to do the work. The resulting aqueducts like the Delaware and the Catskill are modern marvels of concrete and steel, but in their underlying design and purpose, they are the direct descendants of the Aqua Marcia, proving that 2,000 years later, the laws of physics and the logic of long-distance water transport remain unchanged. Beyond the grand arcades and pipelines, the Roman influence extends into the very philosophy of public water management. Their hierarchical distribution system, which prioritized public fountains and baths before private use, established the foundational idea that access to clean water is a public good, a responsibility of the state to its citizens. This concept is the bedrock of every modern public utility company. The sophisticated maintenance regimes pioneered by officials like Frontinus, with their dedicated inspection crews and scheduled repairs, prefigure the modern public works department. The Romans understood that building the infrastructure was only half the battle. Its perpetual care was what truly sustained a civilization. This lesson in proactive maintenance, learned from the slow decay of their own systems after the empire's fall, is now a central tenet of modern urban planning, where asset management and long-term sustainability are critical concerns. Furthermore, the Roman focus on durability and materials science continues to inform modern engineering. While we no longer use lead pipes for potable water, the Roman use of concrete and their understanding of waterproofing with pozzolana-rich mixes directly influenced the development of modern hydraulic concrete, the essential material for building massive dams, reservoirs, and treatment plants that hold and channel our water. Their relentless pursuit of a self-cleaning gradient to prevent siltation is mirrored in the minimum velocity calculations used by engineers today to design sewer and water lines that avoid dangerous blockages and stagnation. Ultimately, the greatest testament to Roman innovation is not just in the physical parallels, but in the shared goal to build cities that are not merely habitable, but truly livable, healthy, and resilient. The aqueducts allowed Rome to break free from its environmental constraints and achieve a previously unimaginable scale and quality of life. In the very same way, our modern water systems enable the existence of megacities, supporting populations of tens of millions by mastering the ancient challenges of supply, sanitation, and distribution. Every time a city plans a new reservoir or lays a new main, it is engaging in a dialogue with those ancient engineers, applying their timeless principles with new tools to answer the same eternal question: how to provide the fundamental resource of life to every citizen, sustainably and efficiently, for generations to come. This remarkable achievement in hydraulic engineering, however, did not come without an environmental cost, forcing the Romans to wrestle with challenges of sourcing and sustainability that feel strikingly modern. To fuel their thirsty cities, engineers primarily sought out the purest sources available: high-altitude springs, which were prized for their cold, clean water free of the sediments and pollutants found in lowland rivers. Yet as demand grew, they were forced to tap into larger rivers like the Anio, a decision that came with significant consequences. Diverting massive volumes from these waterways could lead to local depletion, altering the ecology downstream and reducing the water available for agriculture and other settlements. The very name of the Aqua Anio Vetus, or Old Anio, hints at this reliance on a major river system, a source that would have been visibly impacted by the siphoning of its flow to serve the imperial capital. Faced with these realities, Roman water administrators demonstrated a surprising degree of environmental pragmatism and implemented ingenious solutions to mitigate their impact. They understood that river water, unlike spring water, carried heavy loads of silt and debris that would quickly clog the precise gradients of their aqueduct channels. Their answer was the construction of massive settling tanks, or piscini limeri, at the very head of the aqueduct system. These were large, open-air reservoirs where the incoming water was allowed to slow down and stagnate temporarily. As the flow stalled, suspended silt and particles would settle to the bottom, allowing clearer water to be drawn off from the top into the main conduit. This simple but effective process of sedimentation protected the aqueduct from blockages and reduced the need for constant, disruptive cleaning operations further downstream, a clear practice of preventive maintenance that conserved both the infrastructure and the water itself. This approach reflects a nuanced balance between need and available resources, a form of practical sustainability born from necessity rather than ideology. They operated within the limits of their technology, maximizing the yield from a source while employing methods to preserve its quality and the functionality of their system. For instance, during periods of drought or low flow, the hierarchical distribution system encoded in the Castellum Aquae proved its environmental value. By legally mandating that public supply to fountains and baths be prioritized over private users, the system ensured the core health and hygiene of the urban population was protected first during times of scarcity. The private pipes to villas and businesses could be the first to run dry, a rationing strategy that safeguarded the community's most critical needs. The Roman experience offers a profound, albeit ancient, insight for our contemporary world as cities today grapple with the intensifying pressures of climate change and water scarcity. Their system was a testament to the idea that managing a water supply is not just about engineering delivery, but also about managing demand and protecting quality at the source. They show us that sustainability is not a single technology, but a holistic approach that combines source selection, purification techniques, legal frameworks for distribution, and a culture of conservation. In an era of megadroughts and sinking water tables, the Roman model reminds us that long-term urban survival depends on this same careful balancing act, honoring the limits of our natural resources while using our ingenuity to stretch every precious drop as far as it can possibly go. Despite their iconic image as soaring stone arcades, the reality of Roman aqueducts is far more complex and interesting than our popular imagination often allows. One of the most persistent myths is that these structures were primarily those magnificent lines of arches stretching across valleys. In truth, the vast majority of an aqueduct's length, over 80% in fact, was deliberately hidden from view, running in subterranean tunnels or buried trenches. This wasn't an aesthetic choice, but a profoundly practical one. Burying the conduit protected the water from evaporation under the hot sun, kept it cool and free from contaminants, and shielded the entire vital supply from potential enemy attack or sabotage, a critical consideration for an empire often at war. The famous arcades were actually a last resort, an expensive and complex solution employed only when the terrain demanded it, used to maintain the all-important gentle downhill slope across a deep valley or gorge. So while the arches are the most photogenic and memorable feature, they represent only the tip of the iceberg, a small fraction of the total engineering effort that was, for the most part, quietly and efficiently conducted underground. This leads to another common oversimplification, the role of the arch itself. While the Romans were undoubtedly masters of arch construction, the aqueduct did not rely on this single element. In those long underground sections, the channel was often a simple masonry-lined trench covered with stone slabs. Even when above ground, many aqueducts were not carried on elegant arches, but were instead built into substantial continuous walls, or substructio, which were essentially massive, linear embankments made of concrete and rubble faced with brick. These solid walls were a simpler and often more stable way to elevate the water channel across uneven ground. The arches were reserved for the tallest sections, where building a solid wall would have been prohibitively expensive and structurally unsound, as it would have blocked natural drainage and created immense pressure. The arch was a brilliant tool in their kit, used with stunning effect where needed, but it was far from the only method of support, demonstrating the Roman engineers' adaptable and pragmatic approach to problem solving. Perhaps no myth surrounding the aqueducts is more pervasive or more debated than the specter of lead poisoning. It's a compelling story, a mighty empire brought low by the neurotox and leaching from its own plumbing. The truth, however, is far more nuanced and less apocalyptic. Yes, the Romans used lead pipes extensively, known as fistulae, for their final distribution networks within cities. The material was soft, malleable, easily soldered, and incredibly durable, making it the best available option for creating a complex urban plumbing grid. However, several key factors likely prevented the widespread lead poisoning suggested by the myth. First, the water in these pipes was almost never stagnant. It was in a constant state of motion, flowing from the aqueduct through the public fountains and continuously out into the sewers. This constant flow meant water had limited contact time with the lead interior, significantly reducing the opportunity for leaching. Secondly, and perhaps more importantly, the Roman water supply was notoriously hard, meaning it was rich in dissolved minerals, particularly calcium carbonate. As this mineral-rich water flowed through the pipes, it gradually deposited a hard, crusty layer of scale on the interior walls. This scale, which archaeologists have found in excavated pipes, essentially created a protective barrier between the water and the lead lining, effectively isolating the toxic metal from the drinking supply. This natural process of scale formation would have made the water safer for the general populace who collected it from constantly flowing public fountains. The greater risk may have been for the wealthy elite who had private taps, where water could sit in the pipes for longer periods, and for those involved in the mining and smelting of lead ore itself. While some ancient writers like Vitruvius expressed concerns about lead's health effects, the evidence does not support the idea of a civilization-wide poisoning event. The aqueduct system, with its constant flow and hard water, likely mitigated the very danger its construction materials presented, showcasing an unintended but fortunate consequence of their engineering choices. So as the final stones were laid and the water began its endless journey, the true transformation began, a ripple effect that reshaped every facet of Roman existence. This was not merely a delivery system for a basic resource, it was the catalyst that turned dense, struggling settlements into the first true engines of global culture and commerce. The aqueduct's impact radiated outward, touching everything from the most intimate aspects of daily hygiene to the most grandiose expressions of imperial architecture, creating a standard of urban living that would become the enduring gold standard for over 1,000 years. Think of it as the circulatory system of a vast living organism. The steady, reliable pulse of clean water pumped vitality into the city's heart, allowing it to grow larger, healthier, and more complex than anyone had previously dreamed possible. It enabled the breathtaking scale of the public bath complexes, those sprawling marble palaces of wellness and community that were as central to Roman identity as the Forum itself. It fed the industrial districts, powering mills that freed human labor for other pursuits and supplying the workshops that drove a thriving economy. It nourished the lush gardens that supplied fresh produce and created the shimmering, artistic fountains that turned public squares into open-air museums. Every aspect of what we now consider the hallmark of a sophisticated metropolis, public health, economic diversity, leisure time, and aesthetic beauty, was directly fueled by this single revolutionary invention. This legacy challenges us to see infrastructure not as cold, impersonal concrete and steel, but as the physical manifestation of a society's values and its commitment to its citizens. The aqueducts were a bold declaration that a government's role was to provide for the fundamental well-being of its people, to enhance human life at the most basic level. They stand as a timeless reminder that the greatest engineering marvels are those that elevate the everyday experience, that turn survival into thriving. They prove that a civilization's longevity is not measured by the battles it wins, but by the foundations it lays for peace, health, and prosperity. Now we'd love to hear from you. Looking around at our modern world, what single invention do you believe rivals the transformative impact of the Roman aqueduct? Is it the electrical grid that powers our digital lives, the internet that connects us all, or perhaps something else entirely? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We read every single one. If you enjoyed this deep dive into how ancient engineering built the modern world, be sure to give this video a like and subscribe to the channel for more journeys into history's greatest mysteries. Thanks for watching.